been taken out of HTML5, and towards the end I'll talk a little bit about that, about what I think about that, and whether it's good or bad. The short answer is innovation is everywhere. It's not just in HTML5. So Opera's role in HTML5, this is the advertising slide I have to put in. 2005, W3, 2004 even. 2005, W3C had a workshop. They wanted to say, what is the future of HTML on the web? And Opera went along and said, well, you know, there's this XHTML stuff. Who writes XHTML? A couple. I do, every so often. This slide is just plain HTML, but my last one was XHTML. Who has written XHTML? More. Who has been very disappointed to find that... Right. When you write it, it doesn't work. It still doesn't work. That's a pity. Technically, it's an improvement. But it's useless. So, 5 years ago, we started with Mozilla and Apple. The What Working Group, it's a political pressure group. Right? Anyone who tells you What Working Group is politics-free, What Working Group was founded deliberately for political purposes. You don't get much less politics-free than that. How do we know? Because we founded it. And its goal was to develop HTML. Opera did a web forms proposal. We implemented web forms. I don't know if you've seen the new stuff you can do. All of these nice features, you know, number buttons, a date picker, where I can actually select a date, a slider. All of these are new form features. If you look at the source code for this, you can't yet because I haven't put it online. But if you look at the source code, it's just input type equals date, input type equals range. These are trivial things. And the reason why Opera's implementation is so ugly, we did it in 2005. We haven't changed it for 5 years. It was a demo to show how it happened. We're actually cleaning it up because you should be able to style these things. Right? We know that you need to make them nice. 2007, we said, oh, you should have a video element in HTML. That's now been done. Opera is a big W3C member, not in size of company. You know, Opera has about 800 people. IBM probably has more than 800 employees in Taipei. Microsoft probably has more than 800 employees in Taipei. But at W3C, those three companies have about equal levels of people involved. Right? Those three companies are paying about the same amount of money to make W3C work, providing the same resources. Working group chairs, spec editors, people in working groups. Because we're actually fairly heavily committed to standards. So one of the things we did with HTML5 is push very hard to say, you know, we set up this political group to make HTML, but we really, really want it to be at W3C. We want it to be a proper standard and not something that we make with a few of our friends. And that's an important principle for us, because W3C involves a whole lot more people. It's very easy to get into the What Working Group. You don't have to make any patent agreements. You don't have to sign anything. You join a mailing list, and away you go. On the other hand, W3C actually brings a lot of people that don't participate in What We G. It has better international reach. It has better recognition by governments. It has better recognition by industries like TV and the mobile industry, who are actually putting the web on billions and billions of devices. So it's important to make standards that everybody will recognize. It doesn't matter so much where you make the technical work. It matters where the end result is published. That's politics, and it's unfortunate, but it's the way it is. So W3C has a fairly straightforward way of working. Someone makes a proposal. We said, let's have HTML5. W3C said, nah, that's a stupid idea. Let's have XHTML2. 3 years went by. They said, XHTML2 isn't so good. Let's have HTML5. Yay! So they put together a working group. Basically, they make an agreement that says, come and talk to us about, or come and talk about what HTML5 should be. You have to agree not to be too rude to people. And you have to agree that if you have patents that cover this stuff, you won't charge people licenses. That's about it. It's not very complicated. In most W3C activity, they ask you to be a member. W3C has bills to pay, and they ask companies to help pay them. So Opera hands over money every year. But if you're an individual and you don't work for Google or IBM or the Hong Kong Jockey Club or various other member organizations, then you can just join. And then you talk, right? Like an open source project, you write email, you argue about why your idea is so much better and everybody else's idea is stupid, and eventually you either argue so much that everybody walks away and they copy your idea, or they convince you that your idea is really crazy and you forget about it. We get a draft, we get another draft, we get another draft. We ask the public to comment on this. W3C documents go through a stage called last call, which is, like in the bar, last call for anybody to come up to the bar. Every comment that comes in at last call from every person in the world must be tracked, must be recorded, and the group has to explain how they answered it. Until they do that, they can't finish the spec. This is one reason why W3C specifications take a long time, right? If the whole world is watching and the whole world is commenting and you've got to answer them all, then that's a lot of work. So the people who are doing that work, being people, sometimes sleep, they have to go through all of that process before it's done. When you finally agree, you publish something, you send it to W3C for recommendation. They say, yep, this is good. How do we know it's good? Well, we asked the whole world what it was like, and in the end, the whole world said, yeah, that's all right. Works for me. And W3C has a document you can go and read that tells you exactly how this process works, but that summary is pretty good. So, new things in the web. How many people have used SVG? 1, 2, 3, a few. SVG is pretty new. It's in IE9, or it will be. It's been around for 10 years, a bit more than 10 years, right? And if you don't know it, it's like HTML, except for doing graphics, which, because it's HTML, it means that you can make images from code. If you want to write code that generates ping images or bitmap images, then, frankly, you need to be much cleverer than me, because I'm not very clever and I'm not a very good programmer. But if you want to generate SVG, you just need to produce text. Hello world, produce a bit of text. That's not a hard programming exercise. Making SVG, that's not very much harder because it's all text. It looks like HTML. SVG, so it has interactive animations. It has video. I have a demo here, which I actually wrote all by myself. It uses video, it uses interactive animation, it's declarative, and it's this much code. There'll be an exam on this at the end of the weekend. You'll all pass without even reading. It's really simple to generate this stuff. And see, no cats were actually harmed. My animated clock, this clock took me ages because I had to figure out the mathematics of the little dots around the circle. It probably took me like an hour to produce. But it's interactive, see? Changes color when I click. Click. And, being a proper wind-up clock, I can wind it up. Thank you very much. I've got text. I can do interesting things with the text. Again, this is very complex code. There's that much of it. And all of this bit in the middle, which just defines a line, I just made up numbers at random. I didn't even think about those. They're just random numbers I added. So the only bit I thought about was half the content of this page. To do stuff like this. I've got animation, I've got video, I've got audio, I've got interaction. So I can do things like make user interfaces. This is where I prove my skills as a designer. I sat down, we were talking about how would you design an interface for widgets where you turn them on and off, where you decide what you want. So I said, well, I'm going to make a button and create new widgets. I can move my widgets around, I can drag and drop them, I can destroy them. When I put them here, they're no longer in the DOM. I can rebuild the list. I can hide all of this. I'm clearly not going to get a job as a user interface designer. I can live with that. But once again, I have a huge amount of code for this. There is this page, and this page, and a few lines more. And it took me, I don't know, something like 2 hours to write it, because I'm a hopeless JavaScript programmer. Every time I write a line of JavaScript, it doesn't work, and I have to go back and look it up in the book. So it takes me like 5 minutes per function or per method. But doing things like changing these from stupid circles to actual icons with images, I can do that in about 10 minutes. Attaching these icons so they run real code, and I can attach them to real functions. Even I can do that, and it takes another 10 minutes. It's a very simple prototyping exercise that leads to real interfaces. And it turns out that because this is 10 years old, it was mostly used originally in mobile phones. Probably a quarter of the people in this room have a mobile phone whose user interface is written in SVG. Right? Those nice icons and that background that sit there, it's SVG because it's very easy to prototype, it's very portable, all you need is a browser. And now, that even web browsers run this stuff, it goes on any kind of device you want.